Okay, we're live. Recording, not live. This isn't streaming. Uh,
Okay.
okay. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Jarrett, and I help make RPG books. You thought I was kidding. I could totally just recreate the scene.
Yeah, no. I'll own that. I screwed up recording the audio, so we're doing take two, and that was the exact same opening. Somebody's had practice. Uh,
Sometimes.
so okay, so we were talking about your genesis in
Hmm.
this hobby. You said you've been around for about 6 years, coming out of the Google Plus days. Um,
Hmm.
I mostly know you in an editorial capacity at this point.
Hmm.
Um,
Yep.
that seems to have become. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know you as a person. I don't know if you have like dreams of like never editing another word in your life and like becoming a poet or something. Um, but you have built a reputation as being a beyond competent and quite valuable editor to basically every project I've heard you attached to. Um, but you don't have like a formal editorial background.
So I did the traditional 90s thing of graduate high school, not really know what I was going to do, go to college for a year, um, and start an English degree. Got about a year into that, quit, uh, helped start and run a little independent record label
Okay.
years ago that lasted for about 3 or 4 years. Um, a lot of the lessons I learned from that are helpful now as far as
Interesting.
projects and project management goes.
Sure.
And then, yeah, about 6 years ago, weirdly enough, with the advent of DCC RPG
Hmm.
and discovering that and moving from playing a lot of board games. So I learned, I had the cool uncle that taught me BX D&D like
Okay.
in the 80s when I
Sure.
was a little kid. And then like post college, didn't really have a whole lot of people who played and ran tabletop,
Hmm.
but all kinds of cool people who love uh, board games. So I kind of shifted to board games for about 10 or 12 years. And I was more in the deep end of like slightly more complicated ones, like things like Descent
Okay.
and Arkham Horror and stuff like that.
Sure.
One of my claims to fame is I can set up Arkham Horror in about 15 minutes. Uh,
That's actually as someone who's like struggled to set up that game multiple times. Yeah, that's
yeah, uh, I I love this. I love this shit out of that game. But then, yeah, about 6 years ago, discovered. I guess it's seven now, but whatever. Time we've lost an entire year. It just
didn't
whatever.
happen.
Um, so moved into doing some proofreading on some community projects like Expanded Petty Gods. Helped out a little bit on the Santa Core one of the later years. Then moved around, did a few small projects here and there. Did some editing on Santa is Dead, which got a little any nod. And then randomly met Daniel Sell,
Okay.
Melsonian Arts Council.
Hmm.
And the rest has been like, like hyperspace. Like you press the button. Now it's been a long time, but so it's been like a slow hyperspace. But Daniel, met Daniel online and got hooked up with Christian Kessler,
Hmm.
who's our lead designer and layout and art director at Melsonia. And Daniel trusted us with Luke Gearing's Fever Swamp,
Hmm.
and we put together Fever Swamp, which is one of my favorite things. I keep my clankies, my innies over behind me. People are like, "What do you use this for?" I was like, "I actually use them for to scratch off scratchers for a little while." um, not to disrespect the innies because I I love it, and I'm proud to have won a lot of them and helped a lot of books that I worked on and projects and a podcast, Spellburn. But it's one of those like, what do you do with awards? I guess you try to get better and you try to improve and help more people. So Daniel put me on Fever Swamp, and we won a judge's spotlight that year, and then got on board with from the same company, Melsonia, with doing the second edition of Troika. So not the one that everyone knows, the Numinous edition, but it was like an editorial, doing line editing and copy editing going in. And then when we went to doing a Numinous edition, taking more of a hand in the development, having the time to take rules, help clarify, make them easier to understand, better. Learned a lot working with Christian on that from an information delivery standpoint. And then 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, met Sean McCoy at Gen Con, was introduced by our mutual friend, Uncle Don Stroud. Hi, Uncle Don. And I had the Mothership pocket mod pamphlet in my back pocket because I'd run like 7 or 8 games off of it, just off a little 8-panel. Love that game. Got hooked up with Sean about 6 months later. He was like, hey, want to hire you on board to do edits for these 2 books, The Player Survival Guide, Dead Planet. That is where I cut my teeth real hard on working with other people and more of the design aspect and more of doing some development and stuff. I met the third co-founder of the Moonrat Conspiracy, Fiona Geist. So it's myself, Christian, and Fiona. And then just kind of thanks to her networking and hooking us up with people, got on board with Luca with UVG, which then got us hooked up with Exalted Funeral, and all the time, like doing small projects here, editing things here and there. A lot of the early stuff was copy and line editing and proofreading. But I'd say for the past 3 years, been doing a lot more on the development and the project management side, and helping out other people, encouraging folks. I'm a big cheerleader. Like if someone says, I have this idea for such and such project on the Discord server, if they luck out and I'm there, I'm going to be like, you should do that. And then they're like, what? And then I'll just do a little poke here and there. I'll be like, you should do that. You should do that. And then lo and behold, like a couple months later, they're like, it's your fault. And I'm like, hey, it's good though, because it's more cool RPG stuff.
Yeah.
For everybody. Yeah, I'm lucky to have a few people take a chance on me early on and then find my work ethic inside there and just be the guy that's like, hey, things are bad, things are rough, like this is hard, like the world just sucks, but we're gonna get this book done, because at the end of the day, like sitting down, and even if I'm not able to play that particular day, that particular week, there's still so much cool RPG shit to read and look at.
Okay, so there's a lot of conversation fodder in there. So I think the first thing that's interesting to me, right, I think the cool BX uncle to board gamer to like weird outsider arts person is a fairly common pipeline these days. But I find it very interesting the board game to G+ move.
Mm-hmm.
How did that occur for you?
So that was around the time, let's see, what was I doing? Work-wise, I had taken a year off and was moving into. I was doing water treatment systems for Culligan, and was wanting to get back into playing some D&D, and didn't really know where to start because I had never played 2.5, 3, 3.5 Pathfinder. And one of my coworkers at Culligan, Andy, was like, "Oh, I really want to try out 4E D&D," because he and his wife were long-term 3.5 players. And so he laid into a bunch of 4E books. And this was, of course, right before the 5E publication date. But he picked up a Goodman Games Dungeon Crawl Classics module. I can't remember which one, but it had vampires in it. And the ideas behind it, playing like, so it wasn't DCC RPG. The book hadn't been released quite yet, or if it had, I hadn't seen it. He anyway saw the name, Google search, Dungeon Crawl Classics RPG, and then found this thing, DCC RPG. So we played a little bit of 4E. It was more of a really fun, like, tactical game, and that was cool. And then, like, the 5E early releases came out, and I was just kind of like, yeah, that's cool, but not quite what I want. But inadvertently, DCC was the thing, and I don't even remember how I made the jump to finding, was probably just searching, but I found the Google Plus community, and I found the DCC community, and Adam Miscavige had posted up, he was running a game for his birthday, and one of the players in it was Doug Kovacs, who's the visual, like, he is the visual style of DCC. And Adam was like, yeah, cool. And I was like, I'll jump in. That seems great. And so it was Adam and his partner, Katie, Doug, myself, and Beckett Warren, owner of Weird Realms. And now my coworker at Exalted Funeral. Yay.
I didn't actually realize that.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, fun game. After about an hour and a half, it got a little slapsticky, as you do, birthday games, and there was some drinking involved. And anyway, at the end of it, or the next day, Doug was like, "Hey, I've got a game on Thursdays that I run with these other people," and it was the remnants of the Metal Gods of Yer Haddad game, which was a zine that Adam and Wayne and Doug and Edgar and all those guys had put together for several issues before that. And so I jumped in, and within a couple of months, we're playing this really great game that will someday get out there, I promise, called Warlands, that comes from Wayne Snyder's brain. And I have the raw manuscripts, like handwritten notebooks that I'm in the process of scanning so I can start turning them into an outline so we can start developing it, and making it a book. I'm really excited for that one. But it was, it was just super fun getting to play with people who had never stopped playing RPGs. Like Doug had just never stopped playing RPGs. I mean, he just kept painting, and Adam had never stopped playing RPGs, and Wayne had never stopped playing. And here I am, like, and these guys are all like my age, worth a few years of each other, but it was like, I was definitely a little brother. So I was like, whoa, this is so cool, once again. So it kind of recaptured that. And I mean, I love DCC to death. Like, I currently run one regular game, and then I do some pickup games on the Exalted Funeral Discord here and there for people. Anyway, got hooked up with those guys. Doug convinced me to come to GaryCon.
Okay.
Would have been 2016, I think, 15 or 16 time, and ran some games there and got to meet everybody. And DCC was just a great big family.
I mean, it seems like they still are, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's always been the Joe Goodman vibe. Is
Yep.
it's this very tight knit community of kind of like minded individuals. They're welcoming. They want you to join.
Mm-hmm.
But it okay. So the little brother comment.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, and so you know, for the record, this is the first time we are ever speaking, despite having
Mm-hmm.
like overlapping connections and overlapping communities for many, many years. Despite Fiona being like a very, very good friend, and like me being aware of Moonrat from like the day Moonrat existed, pretty much.
Right.
This is the first time I'm ever actually sitting down and talking to you in any format whatsoever. So I find the little brother thing interesting because in a lot of ways, when I think of Moonrat and the work you're most known for, um, it is in this very specific type of editorial capacity that aligns with, I think, the trends in like information design that you see coming out of things like Mosh and Troika, where it's pared down to the simplest possible elements without being restrictive, which is a difficult. It's a tightrope act in an editing capacity, be it a line editing or developmental editing capacity. How do I give the minimum viable amount of information without actually restricting players by giving them so little? Where is that a honed sensibility for you? Is that a world you stumbled into because you're adept at it, right? Like I don't think there are any two ways to say it. Anyone who's read the things that you've worked on, from Fever Swamp, which is a very thin book, but it packs a lot into it. Or again, Mosh, which I think for a lot of people has become the gold standard of how do you reduce a traveler-sized book down to like a 50-page zine and not miss out on any of the gameable content. Yeah, it's I would not have expected that you would be the little brother. I'm very I'm surprised that you're not just like somebody who spent years like in the board game space thinking about, okay, how do I get this? Because that makes sense to me, right? Someone who plays Arkham Horror a lot and goes, okay, how do I get this unbelievably big, complex game down to a small gameable experience? That's a thought process I get. But yeah, I don't know. Sorry, this is kind of a rambling question, but
No, no, no.
how do you arrive at that type of process and thinking about kind of the minimalist, yes, yet maximalist nature of the stuff that you end up doing?
Uh, I can put credit. I'm going to be nice and not say blame, but credit on you mentioned Arkham Horror because I mentioned it earlier. I love those games from Fantasy Flight. The rule books are hard to parse. They're very, very difficult to parse. My partner, she does not like it because I have taught her to. We'll play it where we're both huge Star Wars fans. Huge Star Wars fans. Like her entire apartment is just Star Wars, Star Wars. So I found Outer Rim, when it came out, and I was like, oh, this is us. This is, bounty hunters. This is our jam. And we were playing it the other day. We played a couple games this week, and she was like, why are these cards so hard to understand? Why don't they have just a throughput, an if then statement? I was like, I don't know. Like I don't, it's not my job there. And that's not me cracking on the design and the editorial aspect of FFG. Like they're doing these very large books with these very large properties and IPs and things. And that's part of what it is as the person who spent years facilitating that game, and running at the table, I want to make it as easy to parse as possible. To go into that, when 5e, the D&D 5e hit, there was a game store, Valhalla's Gate, Columbia, Missouri. Shout out, love them. And they had open call for people who wanted to help run 5e Adventures League, right when it dropped. And of course, I'm like, well, cool. I'll go and I'll play, or I'll help facilitate and run, because my partner at the time and friends were like, hey, we want to play this, but nobody wanted to run it. And I was like, well, I used to. I'll help out. And I graciously thank Valhalla's Gate for letting me help build up from just a couple of tables of Adventures League to 8 or 9 tables of 5 and 6 and 7 players at them. And our big thing was always welcoming new people, always getting new folks to come in. And when you get that, because of the age ranges available for D&D, or pushed for D&D, we get a lot of kids, and of course nobody wants to run the young person's table, except for me. So I think we had the youngest, like 10 or 11, and parents were there supervising and stuff, all the way up to 15, 16, teenage range, right? And that was my table. We were the loudest table. We had the most fun, but it was a challenge of how do we take these big blocks of text, in a WotC book, and how do I have to read all this, or do I just have to be like, no, okay, so pick up that big one. You see that's a 20-sided, and then roll that and add this number to it. And so that's kind of been the whole thing, has been with rules being difficult to read and understand and parse, and we want things to be as simple and concise as possible. And then that rolls into working specifically with Christian and Fiona in Troika and Mothership and stuff like that. Sorry, I won't call it that other acronym. Damn you, Luke Gearing. You owe me. Long running joke. But getting it down to, like you said, the bare minimum that you need to explain exactly what people need. And so that's just kind of always been our thing. It's not that we're trying to go cheap and have less pages.
Sure.
We're trying to just open a book and, this is all I need to run on a spread here.
Well, I think it's, and sorry if I came across as in any way even insinuating that second bit was what I thought, because it has always been to me evident that it is not a cost-cutting measure, right? It is not coming from a place of, crap, if we can reduce this 5 pages, our margin on these books is so much better. I can't speak one way or another to whether or not that's true. At least with Sean, I know he's got a good head for business. I've had more than enough conversations with him in my professional capacity about that. So I could totally see that being a thing that occurred to him, but that never seemed like the reason behind any of it. Okay, so I'm going to say a thing, and then I'm immediately going to put a condition on it, which is I find it very interesting that you arrive at this type of thinking originally, in a sense, via DCC. Mm-hmm. And I say this, and these are the conditions I'm going to put on it. DCC is my house system. DCC is the system I use for work, specifically with youth audiences. I play and run a lot of games for high single digits to low teens. DCC is the game I use pretty much without fail, and most of these kids are brand spanking new. Mm-hmm. I also use it with a lot of adults who are entirely new to role-playing games. I think it's for the type of experience it sets out to create, there are a few things that do it better. It is also an absolute mess. That core book could lose 150 pages with better editing and have the exact same amount of information. It is in many ways simultaneously the easiest system like it to get people up to speed on, which I think you see in evidence in the Quick Start Guide that they produce, which is a phenomenal document, right? I could give that to somebody and they understand RPGs. And yet on the counter side, that core rule book, which is, I think if it's the classic, if you have a baseball bat in your trunk and you don't have a baseball glove, you're trafficking with a deadly weapon. But if you have a baseball bat or a baseball glove, you're not. It's very similar to how I feel about like if I see somebody with a DCC book on their shelf and no other role-playing games, I assume they've used it to kill somebody. Because it's the only reason to have a book of like that. So yeah, it's very interesting that, like, not only are you coming at this as someone who had early exposure but then was in board games, but yeah, there are so many steps in the arc you traced out of your life where I could see it going a different way, right? You come into board games and you seem to like, of the games that you've mentioned, we're not talking micro games, right? We're talking rather large maximalist games. That's what FFG does. And then you come into role-playing games and, like, in the OSR space, but even in the OSR space, you kind of fall into the most maximalist possible game in that space. And then yet I look at your professional output and it is this, like, very considered non-cost-cutting minimalism. That's a lot of just rambling. I think the question in there that I have is, given the work that you do now and the experience you've had in, presenting information in digestible ways to get that new audience, and even the experienced audience on board with these kind of new titles. When you play a game like DCC or a game like Arkham Horror, what do you do? What do you house rule? What do you change that you, if you could, would change internally, would change for a new version of the product?
So that is kind of, I love the 6 stats, strength and con with child, however, I think that part is just ingrained in me forever. As a good fallback. And then you look at stuff like, Mothership, where we have 4, but we also have the 4 saves, which I know can be derived from the 6 stats in a more D&D inspired trad stitch. And then like Troika, where it's 3 stats, if that. And I'm going to be honest with you, I very rarely engage with stamina. That's, to me, that's player facing one. Like, oh wait, you're almost dead. I just don't keep track of it. A lot of it comes from we're playing with Doug and Wayne and James George a lot, especially at conventions, and being a road crew judge for DCC at the friendly local game store and at conventions, where you have people have no idea. They just heard this cool thing, or their friends brought them along, and they want to get it. So I guess I would say I could minimize reliance on stats a little bit, even though it's just a thing I naturally do. One of the best things, and like Doug and Adam will fight it forever, the emergent characters. And Adam did a bunch of work on it on his Kick-Assistan blog years ago. And you sit down and you don't know anything about your character, and maybe you have a physical appearance or something like that, or you just have something in mind, and you do the whole, we meet in a bar, and It's when players start to do something, that's when you roll a stat to see if it's relevant, to see if they need a specific number. And the easiest way to do that is ignore all the stats except for luck. And one of the best rules, and who knows where it was founded or whatnot, is encumbrance. If I'm playing a resource chit game like solo, Mountain Man, I love that. I think it's great. It's lovely solo, and I get to use crayons on the board and stuff like that. Yes, I'm worried about resources. I'm worried about encumbrance. I'm writing down on paper what I have and what I don't have. When it comes to a con game where I've got 3 hours to get somebody into this system, I'm definitely not worrying about that. Shit, did I bring a rope with me? If the player says, "Hey, I've got some rope," I'm like, absolutely, you have rope. I mean, we're in a dungeon. You're not stupid. If they say, do I have rope or do I have something to light this on? I'm like, make a luck check. Roll a d20 under your luck score, and like that, I can run games off of just a luck score all night. Like it minimal. I mean, hell, with the right people, I can run them just off of. Just free-form improv. We have a late night debacle game called Charmisma. It happens sometimes at Gen Con after all the late night DCC stuff, where you just get a group of people sitting around a table and people start drawing on cocktail napkins and scraps of paper, and there's a bottle cap or a plastic cup, and people start drawing and it's just like the first year we did it, it was just totally accidental. It was just goof and improv, and Jez Gordon was worried about getting his flight home back to Australia. And we were just kind of riffing on Jez's adventures to get out of Indianapolis and stuff like that, so yeah, I don't sit down and I when I do stuff, I don't sit down and like, okay, we got to minimalize this. We got to stretch it all the way back down to here. I usually take every single product and project on its own accord. Working with someone brand new for the first time, if they don't know anything, I'll offer them some suggestions for, hey, here's some stuff I've worked on. Let me toss you a PDF or something like that. But if usually people come with an idea of kind of what they want, or, they've seen that, or they come with an idea of what they don't want. And then it's my job to help them kind of find that. But yeah, I could simplify DCC down to a luck stat and some dice rolls for some shenanigans and stuff like that.
Sure, and I think in many ways you'd probably get a lot of what people are still seeking in the DCC experience. Which is not to say like, oh, carve all this shit away, it's unnecessary. But I think, yeah, it's getting to that core of what the audience that you're currently dealing with wants. And I think a lot of times it's just a goofy, fun time.
Yeah, one of the best games DCC ever was at the Valhalla's, and when I was working for Culligan, I was on call sometimes and would have to go out and do an emergency fix on someone's leaky water appliance. Yay! I had left one of the players in charge, and when I came back, she had given everyone plus 37 swords. Like she gave them all magic swords, and they were all plus 37. And I was like, cool, I'll roll with this. So I threw a Tarrasque out of her, whatever. And they just hacked at it for the next hour until time was up. And then I was like, cool, your homework, everybody, is next week. I want you to take the DCC book, go home and do sword magic. So we have boons and banes and all of that stuff. So that's why, like, this book, I like showing off my copy because it's got a lot of
it's very personalized.
It's got a lot of character. The spine is gorilla tape because it's very much like it's coming apart. It's been dropped and thrown around.
Well loved.
This is mine. I love the shit out of it. This is a reference book. You don't, like you said, you don't need this to run the game. Those quick starts, they're amazing. Like the Jeremy Darham, People with Monsters blog, that little short book of all of the tables for character creation and fumbles and stuff like that. You can run off of that like all day, every day. I think that's like that's the biggest thing I've learned design wise from DCC was like, yeah, you can put out a cool, fancy book and pretty book, and people are going to buy it. I mean, like it's they're lovely, but at the heart of it, like most of this is spell references, like, and that's great to me. I have people are like, oh, you've probably read all that. I was like, hell no, I don't know what all those spells do. I want to be surprised in a game when someone's like, I'm gonna cast the Dreaming. My good buddy Gabriel, like he would always cast the Dreaming because he would always play the elf, and it was a King of Elfland spell. And every time it would do something weird, like give us like 4 attacks, or we would freeze time and disappear. It was just that's the fun of this.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I think that leads into a question I always try to ask people, which is, yeah, you know, so much. There's this weird tension in the hobby as players and as people who work in it, where we're clearly here because we already love it, right? I've yet to meet a person who's here because they're like, I just hate games so much, but the money, man, oh, I just can't get this kind of paycheck anywhere else. That's not a type of individual I've encountered.
Yeah.
It's because we already love something, probably a lot of things about what's already in the space. But at the same time, I think this has been especially true probably in the past 10, 15 years, there's just so much new, exciting stuff coming out. And so there's this constant tension between I love what I have and I'm excited for something new. What's that something new? If it's existing already, if it's something you kind of forecast that you're starting to see the whispers of on the horizon, or if it's something that's complete pie in the sky pipe dream that nobody else has thought of yet, like forward facing, what gets you hype?
Well, I am just super stoked that every day on several of the Discord servers I'm on, I see new voices come out of nowhere and be like, hey, I heard about this jam, and I heard about, I heard about this, and I'm new here. And what gets me hype is the breaking down of that walled garden aspect, that gatekeeping. We're getting to a point where new person shows up and they're just like, I can do this. And it's not just playing, it's I can do this. I can make a game. I can look, Business Card Jam, for instance, is going on right now. And Business Card Jam, and I don't remember how many entries there were, but people being like, I've never done this. This is my first time. And we're just like, that's great. Like, that's awesome. And just running with that. I'm seeing, just the new voices, the new products. I'm loving the people doing vinyl records and using those big gatefold covers. Like it's circling back. It's like all of those Yes covers, the Yes album covers coming back around, and then people making games, and then people making records from those games, and then having the games material on the inside of the gatefolds and stuff like that. The postcard jams, Sean Richards, Crapland, the late when he was putting that together, and he recorded the Crapland song on the Lathe Cut record. He was just like, I'm so hoarse, my dog hates me. Stuff like that. Sean and I have some, I can't tell you some, we have some we have some ideas, like some things on the whiteboard over here that we're getting to, just other fun things to ways to put it out. Yeah, people just getting into different form factors. I'm just really in love with the fact that at some point, if I ever can't sit in front of the computer and type anymore, I got stuff in my steel rods in my spine and shit like that. At some point, I'm going to get to the point where I won't be able to like sit down and type and edit it. Like the human body will get to the point where you can't do it, or the eyes go because of staring at a screen all day. That even if I stop being involved in making stuff, there's still going to be 50 new things a month that I'm going to be like, ooh, that's cool. I'm going to have stuff to read and run. Big thing for me is like, I'll sit down and I did a Troika Fest kickoff stream on Monday.
Yeah.
And I had David Hoskins, Luke Gearing are doing this thing with some of David's illustrations for these Black Knights, and Luke's doing his Luke thing and writing these amazing things. And they were originally intended as like bad guys, but Luke's like, no, let's make a background. And then oh, it's great. And so doing some edits on those, and so I had that ready to go if I needed it. Mentioning Sean and Lady Cat Dragon, like I had their Axiomatic Party ready to go. I ended up using Jeremy Childry's Why Would There Be a Wizard's Tower in This Dump, which was great for the group because 3 of the players had never played before, had never played Troika. And I just kind of leaned in, and they had no problem going through a dump and finding jars of pickled pig's feet that were still dancing and like dirty diapers and things. I was like, y'all are weird. No. But that's, to me, like there's just so much. I mean, there's so much stuff that I've worked on that I haven't been able to fully bring every single section of it to a table. And there's, like I said, there's like, pamphlet jams, tarot card jams, like everything. So I am not at a loss for new cool material, and that's what makes me super excited. And yes, there is sometimes there is a cost. Like you not everybody can buy, it's a $50 book, even a quarter or a year. But the good thing is with Troika, our SODs online for free. Mirkborg, I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. Don't hate me, Johan. I've even had Johan pronounce it for me correctly several times, and the Silver Goat, and I still can't get it right. Sorry. But those SRDs are, they're available, like there's things like that. So the barrier to entry is getting a lot lower. Especially during this year of pandemic and COVID and quarantine and lock in and lock down, I've just seen so much more great material. I find myself like sending out, like my friend Derek Kinsman makes these awesome, great business cards, and he lets me buy them at wholesale price because he knows I'm going to put them in an envelope and mail them out to a random person. You know what I'm saying? If I happen to have someone's mailing address or someone's on a server somewhere and they're like, oh, that's really, really cool. I don't have the money to buy that. I'm like, boom, there you go. Like somebody called me RPG Santa Claus one time just because working with Sean and Dan and Matt and Kristen at Exalted, it's like I get comp copies of things, and it's like if creator who's employed me, not only they paid me to do the work on the thing, but they're also like, hey, here's like 4 copies of this. They know that I'm going to randomly send that out. Yeah. And that's my thing. It's like, I mean, little libraries, right? Where you could like, that's a big thing that Christian does and that I do. And we take these extra copies when we get these books and we bundle up, Troika with a couple of modules and some pamphlets and stuff. And we stick them in a little library. You check it the next day, it's gone. Hopefully somebody got that. It's just like, holy shit, and hopefully they can someday be that person making that game and doing the same thing and paying it forward and sending it on and helping more people make more cool shit.
Yeah, I mean the social component of doing the good work, right?
Yeah.
it's not just making the cool thing. It's helping other people make it. It's
Yeah.
helping other people discover it. Yeah, I wonder. This is gonna be weird. I don't think I'm cool enough that if I were to start being interested in the hobby today, I would be looking in the places all the really cool stuff is happening.
Hmm.
And I don't think that's inherently like a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing that I think I know about myself at this point. Because when I think about like the new people who do really exciting stuff, right? Like Sean. Um, I actually need to reach out to Sean. It's been a while. I'm hoping so. Sean used to like every single day just send me new stuff he was making in Twitter DMs, and it was like throughout quarantine how I knew Sean was doing okay because he just kept putting stuff out, and then eventually he realized he had made 18 books in the past year, and I was like, Sean, you seriously just need to calm down, dude. It's okay. But when I think about that, or Chris Bissett, who did The Wretched and like all the solo game stuff that's come out of that, or Dan, or just any of the people who, when I think of doing interesting, weird stuff, record labels, the Games Omnivorous crew out of Portugal.
Mhm.
That's not me. I'm a weirdo academic dude who just like stumbled into games because I had no friends. And in high school, it was a lot easier to like put my coat over my head in the school library and like play by post games than talk to people. Um, and I have been lucky enough to get carried on through like obsessive following to meet all these really interesting people and see all the stuff they're doing. Um, but yeah, it's strange to say, but I think games as they exist today is probably the coolest community I've ever been in. And on the social cool, I feel like an imposter. Um, which is not anything that anyone has done to me, right? That is
Mhm.
purely a projection. Um, but it is something that I see reflected in the old guard, which I do not consider myself part of. I've been around long enough that I think of myself as like an old head, right? I've seen several generations of like creators come and go, but I'm not the old guard, right? I'm not like the dudes who work at Chaosium. I'm not somebody who's been at
Sure.
WotC forever. But I do see that tension. Um, as someone who is, I have no idea how old you are, but we're certainly not in our 20s anymore.
45. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, um, is that something that you ever experienced? Just being like, and I'm trying to think: is there a positive version of like old man sitting on his porch watching kids go by, like not grumpy old man, excited old man? Um, like, is that something you ever experienced working with all these like young exciting new voices doing the good work of actively bringing people into the space and encouraging this proliferation of just like strange material? um, do you ever feel like, I don't know, that it's just moving really fast and that your age shows?
I definitely do.
Yeah.
Because like working with Fiona and Jared, and Micah and people and watching people put stuff out, like I'm just like, where are y'all coming up with this shit? you know, um, it's yeah, it's I do sometimes feel like I am a little bit being left in the dust occasionally. Like what's the LCD sound system? I'm losing my edge.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are coming up behind, and like what? But then you put that song on, you get in the shower, and you just like dun 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 dun, and you're just like, you know what? I'm going to do that today.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get out there, and I'm going to make it a point to reach out to someone and be like, hey. check this out, kids, check this out. You know what I'm saying? Find a voice that I haven't listened to. Find an underserved person who's who I can help in some way, shape, or form. If it's, and even if it's just like good job, or a thumbs up emoji, or or a rock and roll emoji on Discord somewhere, like, and just do that, just because those little bits of encouragement is what got me to where I'm at.
Yeah.
And doing that forward, like one of my favorite things that Christian says is punch up, network down. And that's like, that dude keeps me on my toes, as far as like, yes, it's awesome and it's cool, and we have person X who can write and person Y who can draw in this layout, but it's like we're constantly looking for other people that aren't us to help out in whatever way we can, and just be like, what can we do, what, because I mean, dude, I'm white, you could tell, and like I'm a dude and kind of got a lot of stuff, yeah, given to me, and like I, you just, if when you know that, and it's, no, I'm not out there like waving a flag. I'm doing the work of handing folks like my hand and being like, "Hi, I'm Jarrett. How can I help you?" Like listening is the biggest part of anything, and listening is the biggest part of it, of game design. Like, we always, with editing, we always say, we definitely preface, especially when we work with new clients, is these are suggestions. These aren't how we have to do things, but usually there's a couple of days of back and forth, some emails and messages till we get to, what does this person need? What do they want out of this, or work, or life, or whatever? And how can we do what we do and make things better, easier, more productive for people.
I am for one incredibly excited to be washed out to sea. Right? Like,
Yeah.
if I'm not, that's a bad sign, right? I am not doing amazing stuff that justifies continued relevancy, right? Like, my goal is to just have the tide sweep over me and get just disappeared. That's a good thing in my eyes. And yeah, as you said, the more that can be encouraged. I mean, in a big way, that's why I started my education business, right? It's just, I want more people to start young looking at game design, so that more new stuff comes out faster. And like, a very happy side effect of that is, well, the old stuff just kind of gets slowed away faster. Now, the archival part of my brain laments the loss of history, because we are not very good at keeping track of the stuff that's been released.
Yeah. No, you're right there. Yeah.
And so certainly in that regard, I think I would love us to keep creating lots and lots of new stuff, but also develop a system for not completely losing the stuff that has come before. But if I had to choose between those two, yeah, just keep making new stuff. That's the one that wins out every time.
Yep.
I don't want to choose between those two, but
Sure.
I know where my bet is made.
Yeah.
Okay, so for you then, right? We're talking about all this exciting new stuff that other people are doing. What's like getting you, like, other than obviously the work you're paid for, and like you're a working professional, you have clients, you have companies you work with, but like, what's getting you out of bed to keep doing this stuff other than the paycheck?
I love games. I just literally love games. Like, my brain isn't like in the design mode 24/7 like a lot of my friends are. Like, I have friends who, who constantly think, like, game design. How can we fix this? How can we, blah,
Just
blah,
like
blah.
full on crackhead mode, just constantly
Yep,
looking at
they're
everything like
just
it's a
like
game.
always thinking of stuff. What gets me out of bed is I really like completing a thing. I really like taking on a challenge. I like approaching someone who maybe didn't think that they wanted an editor, or they didn't know what an editor does, or they've never worked with an editor before, and sharing things back and forth, and learning about process, learning about how other people work. um, it's literally just the act of doing stuff, and doing things. Like, I've got the big dry erase board, and I've got spiral bound notebooks and flat notebooks, and restaurant ticket pads, and like I'm more organized than say a lot of people, but also it's not perfect or anything. But it's nice to be able to check off thing at the end of the day. It's not, or when it's done, big big Exalted Funeral order. I'm projects manager over there. Matt and Kristen are lovely people, and they trust me to help them get things from A to B to in the store, and in distro, and in other stores. And just working the last couple of weeks with getting this big print order out. Like, that to me is exciting. Was it easy? Hell no, it wasn't easy. We're learning. We're all learning this together. There, they're in other spaces. Um, but it's cool for me, because now we've done it. Now we've got this process. Now I know that before I send the printer files, I need to do more due diligence and go through the damn thing and make sure there's no issues. And then that way, I'm not having someone come back to me and be like, oh, hey, we need this. Oh,
Sure.
hey, more things in the production cycle.
Okay, so real quick, this is, I don't know. So many times thoughts have occurred to me, and then I just completely lose them because I don't have a great head like that. But I spent a lot of time thinking about what type of individual, from like a psychographic or demographic standpoint, really comes to games, right? And how that changes over time. And I don't think I've ever really realized until now, one of the big commonalities is that so many of the new people are just autodidacts.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that gets people excited is actually learning, right? And that seems to be replicated at every stage. It's, you love learning how to design, and you love learning how to do layout, right? What sane person goes, yeah, I'm gonna download some Adobe Suite competitor software and spend the next 3 weeks figuring out how to do it so that I can make layout pretty for a book that'll earn $5, right? Like, that's not a normal rational human decision, but it's very common in our space.
Mm-hmm.
And even at EF, right, the business process. I think this was on the first abortive recording, but like, you're coming at a restaurant service, like, as someone who is worked in a dish pit or been a food runner, there isn't a logistical component to that. Like, these are things that you do learn, but that's very different than like the kind of distro logistics you're probably managing at EF. And that is an exciting thing for you to like
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out, know that you've done it, complete it, work with a new voice. Yeah, learning seems to be a core, almost precondition to thriving in this hobby these days, like a love of learning.
100%. It's I mean, in restaurants and behind the bar, it's a dance. Like, it's always a dance. And the last bar I worked at, El in Kansas City, I was older. Ian and Mac and Shade they were they were 20 years younger than me. They called me dad. But we figured out our dance real quick. We figured out who works in this and how we work in the space and stuff like that. And then as soon as we figure out our physical space, then we can figure out, admin space and managerial space. And that's what, with RPGs, we don't have as much currently physical space. And for me specifically, it's not like I'm in an office with Sean Richard or Sean McCoy or Kristen, stuff like that. But we spend time on the phone, and so it's kind of like we're in the same space. And so the quicker we're figuring out the physical space, the easier it is to get the admin stuff down. That way when I get a text message from somebody that's like, hey, we need this done, or a Discord like, hey, this isn't working, blah blah blah, what can we do? I can be like, hang on, let me go to person whoever, and they can be like, hey, this isn't here, or just it's teamwork. It's honestly teamwork. Like that's it's just this is one of my biggest things. And I have to fight that. Everybody has to fight that, because everybody wants to be the big name, and they want to be renowned and renowned, but you don't get there by yourself. I don't care what anybody says. Mega huge famous pop stars don't get there by themselves. They have hair and makeup and vocal coaches and recording engineers and session musicians and sometimes song. It's yeah.
Especially in this space, right? There aren't those highs, so it almost artificially keeps you honest. What's the highest high you can actually reach in analog games, right? Lead designer on a new edition of Dungeons and Dragons. It's probably like the piece de resistance like position one can reach from a prestige standpoint. And even that, that's nobody's stopping you on the street. Like you're not really that hot shit. You're just the dude who did the bigger book.
Right.
Having a passion for learning, having a passion for being a decent team member, right? Obviously, there are the unicorns, the standalones, the guys who can do just absolutely everything under the sun all by themselves, and it works out perfectly. And, whatever, good for them. But that's not most of us, right? Most of us have to have that passion for helping other people and working with other people and figuring out that dance, as you said. All right, so we're at like an hour. I guess then the really last question for me is like what's next? What's next for you?
Well, today, answering text messages from Matt. You can't hear it, but I forgot to shut down Discord, but it was blowing up in my ear. Checking in with that. Okay, shield mode. So depending on when this goes live, might still be able to get in on board with the Academies of the Arcane.
It'll go tonight. So.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So Academies of the Arcane Kickstarter from Melsonian Arts Council is up and live, and we just got the thumbs up for some new for some stretch goals. Dan's going to be putting those in there. Christian has some ideas for some products. We're going to be working with our artist Corey to get those done. So that'll be cool. Mothership box set is in process right now. We have a playtester server where we kind of open it up outside of the group of developers. We've got more folks who playtesting extension and doing stuff like that. So it's still in yelling things to the void and writing and testing phase. Getting closer. Over at Exalted, got that big print order out, working with some more print for some more creators doing some more zines and stuff like that. Getting ready to launch a new Kickstarter soon for ARC. Momentos, Bianca. So yeah, that one that one fell victim to the part of the shipping woes with things taking so long everywhere. So, but we're hoping to get ready and go thumbs up live with that one pretty soon.
Nice.
Later in the summer and fall, working with Anna, Double Proficiency, on her Herbalist Primer book. Fiona and I are going to be co-editing that. Anna is fantastic. We worked with her on the OSC adventure modules for the big OSC Kickstarter that just wrapped. Got super good rapport there, and it's fun to work with those two ladies. More stuff coming in down the pipeline from Melsonia. I'm doing edits on a couple 3-5 Zine Quest things, a couple of Mothership ones. Running my usual, I run alternating Sundays for my DCC campaign. It's a bunch of game designers too, so it's very much little. I sit back and they'll talk for like 30 minutes in character and goofing. They're like, "Do you want to say it?" I'm like, "I'm just watching y'all just do your thing. This is great."
I'm watching my programs right now. Like, I'm good.
Yeah, exactly. What else? Myself, an Anxiety Wizard, and Lexapro Luther. We are Cave Full of Spiders. We do little Dada, Troika inspired books. Forget Everything You Thought You Knew About Bread Robots. Beans RPG.
Yep.
We have the third one. Anxiety Wizard sent me. The new, what is it? The new Leisure Dream catalog. These are just like they're good exercises for us. Like Anxiety can like blast out cool weird stuff, and Lex and I can just kind of riff, and it's very much Dada like art. Like it's the way my brain works. It's the way their brains work, you know. And if we could put that together into a little 8-sided zine, and I can run off 100 copies, we sell them through Spear Witch and Exalted, and they're just fun.
That's where I get them, a Spear Witch. I get them all through
Jarrett. Yeah, it's totally they're like, if we make any money on it, we just like learn the negative for it. But whatever, it's just fun to put them out, and people are like, "What is that?" And we're like, I don't know. You know. And then just helping a bunch of other folks with a bunch of other projects in, you know, anywhere from just an advisory capacity to, you know, like helping people find artists, layout editors, doing actual editing, doing editing cleanup. I'm trying to make sure I mention every single person that
it's like an Oscars acceptance speech. Like inevitably you're gonna forget somebody.
Right, and somebody's gonna be upset about it, and I'm like, no, I'm
sorry, Mom.
Yes, well, it's good. So I did the Troika Fest stream Monday. This with you today, and then I'm doing an interview with Shiro Friday for a Swedish RPG. Magazine publication too, so that's cool. So I think by the end of the week I'll have mentioned everybody.
Yeah. Somebody watches one of them and is just like, I wasn't mentioned. Be like, yeah, but you are on the other two. Good, that's on you.
See, there we go. I mean, more than anything, I'm just like super excited to work with all these cool people. That Meredith Silver layout for Academies of the Arcane. Not only is she badass layout wizard, she also did our video for the Academy's Kickstarter in like 8 hours because we had to ship her some props, and had to ship them via Amazon, and it took a little longer than we thought. So she like bashed it out just like that. There we go. I don't think I forgot anybody. And Brian, the author on that, they're fantastic. You've interviewed Brian before, I think.
Yeah, maybe? Yeah, Brian's good people.
Brian Yasha. So, just a lot of everyday. Like I said, I'm lucky enough to be able to work with more people, and help out. And you know, like the street says, let's push things forward. Like let's keep working. Let's keep doing, like, learn from our mistakes. You know, if we hose it somewhere, hey, we're gonna hose it somewhere. It's gonna happen. Pick yourself up, dust it off. Don't take it personally unless that's what you need to do. But
Keep
like,
going.
get back in there, do more work, and do more work, and do more work, and
I
you
mean,
know.
it certainly sounds like you're following your own advice on that one.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. And then also, do smart things like remember to spend time with my partner and hang out with the cats. So there's that.
Yeah.
That's the really exciting parts of the days.
Shout out to the people who actually matter.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yes. Debbie, the Jeebs, and Itty Bitty. So.
I feel like I have a guess on which one is the human and which ones are the cats.
Yes, Debbie is one of the
Yeah, my partner Jeeves.
Yeah, the Jeeves. He actually
Jeeves.
he has a lot of names. His real first name or whole name is Sir Gilbert McLindsay. But yeah, long story. But currently he is Jeebers Stones and she is Bitterstones. So yeah,
Why not?
I just do. I change their names every week or so, and Debbie's like, "Why do you do that?" I'm like, "I don't know, because I can."
Yeah, keep them on their toes.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this is good. I'm glad that after all this time of like orbiting you, I finally like actually had an excuse to sit down and
Same.
chat.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, I guess I'll have someone we both know ping you when it's live.
Sure. That's fine. I think I am subscribed to your channel. Like, it's one of those things. It's like I just, like, sort of not on Twitter, so I don't see a lot of drops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I've been trying to get better about doing subscribe on YouTube for channels and stuff like this. It's always weird because I think my voice sounds so stupid on recordings. Everybody does. It's weird because I used to be in a band and I was one of the singers and didn't have a problem with my singing voice, but man, I sound like a nerd.
I know there's absolutely no reason why you would ever believe me, because I know when people tell me this, I don't believe them, but like, you have a perfectly fine voice. As someone who has heard a lot of voices, there are people who I'm like, okay, you're saying really interesting shit, but I want to cover your mouth. I don't like the sounds that are coming out of it. But you are not one of them. I'm like, I'm more than happy to sit back and listen. That was a good voice.
Everyone, I paid him $50 to say that.
Oh,
Just
getting me
so
some McDonald's tonight.
That's right.
Yeah, I work for my money. All right, man. Well, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and look forward to, once we all get to convention time again, running into at a convention. Fiona and I have been honing our vaudeville routine for a couple years, and we had worked out all this stuff for the Ennies last year, and we didn't get to do it. So we've got 2 years worth of material, and I think that you might be able to work into that. So that, I think, would be fun.
All right, I've been holding off on interviewing Fiona because I really want to interview her in person, because she was the one who I was like, oh, you're gonna be a hot mess when I do this, and I feel like I want to do her justice and like keep that energy involved. So you may watch one of these between me and Fiona in person whenever Gen Con happens again. All right, man. Well, good luck with Troikafest and Academies of the Arcane and all the other stuff you got going on.
Cheers.
Yeah. Peace.